Okay, everybody, this is what I would have been talking about in my lecture on Wednesday had classes not been canceled. I'm going to start in the course notes on page 203 on the special concerns with fingerings to remind you that don't assume band method books will present the best fingerings for the bassoon. A really important resource for future band directors is a book called The Primary Handbook for Bassoon by Richard Palumchek. It's the best go-to source for fingerings and pretty much all things bassoon. Newer copies look like the book on the left, but you may find an older copy with the blue cover still. Nothing inside has changed. I'm not going to mention the whisper key right now because I've talked about that quite a bit. So I'm moving on now to the half hole and above. By the way, last week we talked about the standard fingerings for E flat, which most of you are aware is a real problematic note on the bassoon. This is the odds and thumbs fingering. There's an alternate fingering for that, the trill E flat key. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But I want you to know that in the Palumchek book, it tells you to add the low E flat key with your pinky on a Fox Model 41 bassoon. That adds more complexity for the beginning students, makes it really confusing. And on a Fox Model 41, it has almost no effect. Some bassoonists add that pinky, some do not. So I don't teach that to my beginners just because it slows them down too much, and that note is hard enough to begin with. Make sure you're aware of that for certain notes like F sharp and G sharp, there are alternate ways to finger it involving the pinky and the thumb. Both of these notes have a pinky version and a thumb version, and sometimes because you have to use the thumb for B flat, you're going to use one or the other. All right, now on the bottom of the page here, this is really important. All right, the first three upper register notes on the bassoon, F sharp, G, and G sharp, are half hole notes, which you play using the half hole by rolling your first finger a little bit and partially uncovering the first tone hole. These three notes are played with the whisper key pressed. Above that, from A natural up to high D, you cover the half hole back up, but you release the whisper key with your thumb. You lift them. And these are some of the more challenging notes to play. A through D, the fingerings are the same as the low octave, just with the whisper key released. All right. Above that, you get into the bassoon altissimo register, and you're adding cross fingerings and venting. And those higher notes with a decent reed actually come out easier than some of these. Trying to slur to one of these notes from below the break is really problematic and necessitates a skill that's unique to the bassoon called flicking. I sent you a handout from the Palumchek book, the Primary Handbook from Bassoon, about flicking and what that is. Essentially, when you try to slur from, let's say, an F to an A, high A natural, remember, the bassoon whisper key is not a true octave key. Just releasing your thumb doesn't mean that that high note is going to pop out. When you tongue that note, the tongue gives that note a little bit of a boost, and so it'll usually come out pretty well when you tongue. But let's say you're trying to slur from fourth line F to that high A, it won't always come out. There's no guarantee. So the bassoonists have to do something known as flicking, where you're going to flick, that is to slap with your thumb, not press and hold, but slap a key called a flick key with your thumb at the point of the attack of the high note. Okay, so let's take a look here at this Fox Model 41 bassoon I have. And here's the left hand. The keys operated by the left thumb. All right, these keys over here are on the wing joint. This, of course, is the whisper key. The next one with 3 fingers gives you a D flat. The same key with 2 fingers gives you an E flat. Above this key are what are known as the flick key. This is a Fox Model 41, so it's kind of a basic entry-level bassoon. It has only 2 flick keys. A more professional instrument has 3. The first one is known as a high A key. This one is a high C key. And what is not on this bassoon would be an additional button where my finger is right here, and that would be a high D key. All right, so let's say we're trying to slur from that 4th line F to a high A, top of the bass clef. What you're going to do is when you want the A to come out, you're going to take your thumb and you're going to pop that key, just kind of slap it. You don't press it and hold it down. You flick it, you hit it like that. At the moment, you want the high note, the high slur, to come out. All right. I sent you that handout on flicking. The high A key is used for A natural, B flat, and B natural. The C is used for C and C sharp. And if I had a D key, it would be used for D. All right. I always ordered my Fox Model 41s for my beginners with a D, high D key. That's a Model 41D. Just because it's sort of a real good thing to have. That way it was more than just a stripped down kind of beginner instrument, but that's sort of a special order. You have to order a Fox Model 41D, the D being an addition of a high D key. All right. The way you introduce this is you play low A to high A, so the student doesn't have to change any fingers, and then just hit the flick key with your thumb when you want the high note to come out. Once they can do that, then you try to change fingers, like from a 4th line F to that A. It's a little bit more complicated for the student when they have to change their fingers. On my course note, guys, I have a mistake I'd like you to correct. I had the high A key mislabeled as high C. It said high D, high C, high C. That's probably because I cut and paste that text in there. So you see where that red A is. Please change your notes so that it's labeled accurately. Now, flicking is only necessary on slurs. If you're tonguing that high A, the tongue is going to give it a little bit of a kick. The note will come out. But if you're slurring, you have to do the flicking. All right, tuning on the bassoon. Tuning on the bassoon, first of all, we do not pull out or push in. This is sort of a thing where we just insert the vocal all the way. Bassoon vocals are numbered, usually 1 through 4. Most bassoons come shipped with a number 2 and a number 3 vocal. As you might expect, the higher the number, the longer the vocal. So if the student is playing flat, you make sure they're not playing on the number 3, and you have them switch the vocal to a number 2. If they're sharp, make sure they're playing on a number 3. Now, all my students had 2 vocals like this for tuning purposes. I had in the office, but not issued to students, a number 1 and a number 4. In case of emergency, day of contest, the kid's got a pretty good read, but boy, it's really flat, and the number 2 is not getting it up there. I hand that kid the number 1. And of course, the number 4 for the opposite situation. All right. You can also adjust the intonation through the use of a reaming tool. If the reed is playing flat, you take the reaming tool, like you see in the picture here, and you scoop out some of the inside of the reed. That makes the opening bigger, so when you push the reed on to the vocal, it will go down further, effectively shortening the length of the reed and vocal combination, which will bring the pitch up. Okay? All right. The F, 4th line F with no fingers, tends to be kind of a flat note on the bassoon, and you just need to make sure your students play with firm lips to lip that note up. If they play with real loose lips on that and they're not firm and have a good grip with their lips, then that note is going to end up being flat. Same with E natural. As you go lower on the bassoon, the pitch gets a little bit more stable, but F and E natural, left to their own devices, are going to be notes that are kind of flat. All right, moving on. Vibrato. The bassoon is an instrument that does utilize vibrato, a diaphragm vibrato, not a jaw vibrato like the saxophone. It's one of those instruments in band where sometimes you vibrato, sometimes you don't. If you are playing solo literature, it's going to be a vibrato instrument. It's really beautiful to listen to when done well. If you're playing in an ensemble with a band, it sort of depends what you're playing along with. If the bassoon is doubling with bass clarinets that don't vibrato, then play with a straight bassoon. That Palumchek book, the primary handbook for bassoon, has a very good trill fingering chart for the bassoon. Once you get to the altissimo register, that's going to be above high D natural. Then you start employing cross fingerings and releasing of the whisper key. These notes actually come out easier than the notes below them. For example, high E, high F, they come out pretty easily. Okay? All right, moving on. Notes on the bass joint. These are the really low notes on the bassoon. Since the bassoon is a conical reed instrument, you know that the low notes are going to be kind of hard to produce, kind of loud, and not so easy to play in tune. So you're not going to get to these notes until probably second semester after the students have a pretty good established embouchure and they're pretty confident of what they're doing. Okay? The best way to teach this is a descending C scale. So I would introduce these really low notes on the bassoon when the beginners were ready to learn the C scale. This works out really good with oboe and flute when those instruments are also ready to get down to the bottom of their instrument. Descending first rather than ascending, because this is going to be like add a finger exercise that we do when we start with one finger and go down to 6. The reason we want to do the C scale is the bassoon is really at home in the key of C, and as you descend from the second space C to below the bass clef, you only have to add one finger at a time as the kids are going lower. Notice that from C to F, you have to press the whisper key, but once you get to E, it is no longer necessary to press the whisper key because the pancake key is connected to the whisper key pad, and when you press the pancake key down, it's going to close the whisper key for you. So let me kind of show you that. All right, here's the pancake key, and when I go ahead and press it, notice that bridge is lifting. That bridge is connected to the whisper key pad, and as I press it, it will hold the whisper key closed for the student. Okay? So anything below low E, the student does not have to keep their thumb on the whisper key. All right, so starting out on C, it's 3 fingers, 4 fingers to B, 4 fingers, 5 fingers to A, 5 fingers, 6 fingers to G, and now 6 fingers pinky. And remember, let me flip this bassoon over. The pinky keys, the right pinky keys on the bassoon, like the oboe, are counterintuitive, meaning that the higher button produces the lower note. So this is low F sharp, and this is low G sharp A flat. The lower key here plays the higher note. So they get down to 6 fingers and they press this with their ring finger in their right hand. Then the next note they add is low F. They put their pinky on this. And just like that add a finger exercise we do in class on all the instruments, once you press the finger, you keep it down. So the next thing that comes after this pinky key is going, I got to flip the bassoon over again. Okay, we're on the back of the bassoon. After the pinky, the student is going to press the pancake key to go from F to E, then followed by this key that kind of looks like a baseball bat. This one here is low D, and then something we don't do on oboe and clarinet because we like to alternate pinkies and stuff, but on bassoon like saxophone, there are roller keys, and in this case, you slide to this key here that kind of looks like a half moon, and that's low C. Okay, so you get E, on the banana key, hold that down. Then with your left thumb, that doesn't have to press the whisper key anymore, remember, because low E is opening that key up. That's low D, the one that looks like a baseball bat. And then to get the C, you slide to that. Now, once the student can play the C scale and they're comfortable with it, then you can try the B flat scale and get down to B flat. And when you do that, you have to press this half moon key, the B key, and the B flat key. Your thumb has to lay across all three of these keys. You don't have to keep your thumb on the baseball bat over here, the D key, because notice when you push the half moon, the C key, it pulls the D key down for you. But to play B flat, you have to lay your finger across all three keys to close those up. The B flat key does not automatically close the B key. You got to lay across all three of these with your thumb. Moving on now. Reed making and adjusting, okay? You might want, for sure, have a reaming tool so you can adjust the pitch if you got a reed that's flat. A plaque is something you put in between a double reed if you need to end up scraping it a little bit to make it a little easier to blow for kids. Most people who aren't double reed players or accustomed to maybe adjusting clarinet reeds are going to have a problem with that, but everybody can probably use the reaming tool. Duco cement is a glue. Make sure you keep it locked up and secure, but you can use it for sealing leaks and for repairing that thread crown in case one of the threads get cut and it starts to unwind. You can use that cement to kind of save that reed and lock that thread down. Now, the bassoon, when you're playing high, sometimes is written in tenor clef. Now, it has become popular in the last several years to have at least one all-state audition etude to include some or even be all in tenor clef, which is not a lot of fun for kids, but it's been kind of popular the last several years to at least include maybe 2 or 3 lines in tenor clef on bassoon all-state etudes. Contrabassoon it's kind of like piccolo to flute, except it goes the opposite way. It fingers like a bassoon. You read notes like a bassoon, but it sounds an octave lower. They're like expensive, really highly established high school programs, like Berkner High School has one, I think. Only those schools have a contrabassoon. It's usually kind of a university thing, and some universities don't even have them because they come with about a $20,000 price tag. All right, it's a really huge reed. If you ever are in a situation where you're directing an orchestra and you need to get one, you're going to have to find a reed from a specialty double reed boutique like Forrest Double Reeds. The French bassoon is an instrument which is nearly extinct, but not quite. It's basically only played in France now, and even the only major manufacturer that still makes a French or buffet bassoon is the Buffet Company themselves. The Selmer Company stopped making French bassoons in the 1970s, okay? The French bassoon is narrower, and you can facilitate some things. It's not as big a sound. It's actually closer to the bassoon of Mozart than the German bassoon or the Heckel bassoon, which was sort of a more radical departure from the bassoon that Mozart and Beethoven were accustomed to. Okay, they're a little reedier. There's an urban legend. You cannot tell a French bassoon from a German bassoon just by looking at the bell. Some people thought, well, if it's got like a metal ring on it, it's a French bassoon. And if it's got an ivory or faux ivory bell ring, then it's a German bassoon. That's not really the case. That's a little bit more of, there's more to it than that. The French bell is narrower and so on, okay? So it's not a simple matter. For example, it's common for Fox to make like the Bernard Artist maple bassoon. It's a step-up kind of bassoon. Instead of the ivory ring, it has a metal bell ring, it's still a German bassoon. Okay, but some people think that if it's got the metal ring, it's a French bassoon. That is not the case. And I think that's it. So that covers pretty much what I was going to talk about. I sent you an email that has a handout from the primary handbook for bassoon about flicking and how to teach flicking. Please add it to your appendix for bassoon. It will be a useful resource. All right. 8 o'clock class, your exam is Monday at 8. 9 o'clock class, your exam is 8 o'clock on Wednesday. Good luck, everybody, and hope you guys do real well.